your source for everything paranormal. Para-X. The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para-X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
Merry meet and merry part, bright the cheeks and warm the heart. For tread the circle thrice about, to keep unwelcome spirits out. Bide within the law you must, in perfect love and perfect trust. Mind the threefold laws you should, 3 times bad and 3 times good. These 8 words the read fulfill, and ye harm none, do what ye will.
Welcome to Stirring the Cauldron on the Para-X Radio Network. And now, here's your host, Marla Brooks.
Hey, merry meet everybody, and welcome to Stirring the Cauldron. Tonight we're going on a little trip, actually once around the sun, with my guest, Evert Hopman. Now, she's been a Druid initiate since 1984, a founding member of the Order of the White Oak, and an Archdruidess, I always get tied up on that one, of the Tribe of the Oak. And she's also a member of the Grey Council of Mages and Sages, the author of several books, including Walking the World in Wonder and Secret Medicines from Your Garden. And tonight we're going to be exploring her new book, Once Around the Sun, Stories, Crafts, and Recipes to Celebrate the Sacred Earth Year. As you know, if you're in chat, comments and questions are always welcome here. And if you'd like to be a commenter or a question asker on Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern for the live show, you can always come over to paraxradionetwork.com. Ellen, welcome back.
Well, thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here again.
Yeah, well, you keep writing wonderful books, and that's going to keep happening. And so, get used to it, because I'm really happy about it. All right, so the first thing that came to my mind, sorry, when I read the title, I mean, I may be out of the loop, but it's only been a few months that I've been hearing the phrase once around the sun, and usually in the context of somebody referring to their birthday or somebody wishing them a congratulations that they made it through another year. So is that a new phrase or an old reference that's been brought back to life, or, like I said, just me being out of the loop?
Goodness. I don't know. It's poetry. It was a poetic expression, because the book is about the wheel of the year.
Yeah.
So it's about the earth moving around the sun for one cycle. And, of course, the cycle is eternal. It goes on and on. But that's really what the book is. It covers all the festivals, the fire festivals, the solstices, the equinoxes, and it's designed to be with original stories to be read out loud at each festival. So it can be done with kids, but I'm told that grown-ups like it too. And I've even been told that some grown-ups keep it by their bed because it fills them with hope. And I'm really glad to hear that, because it was written during the pandemic, when we didn't even have vaccines yet. It was like the depths of the pandemic. So I didn't even realize what was happening, but I was trying to encourage myself. And then Jane Yolen, who wrote the foreword, she's a very well-known children's author. She wrote a beautiful foreword, and she really picked up on that it was all about hope. And it was about how even in the darkest night or the stormiest night, eventually the sun rises. Or even after the darkest winter, when things look dead and bleak, eventually the spring comes back, So there's this strong current and message of hope that goes through the book. And so I think people will be able to use that, even if there's no pandemic.
What I was going to say was that, you talk about it being doing it at rituals and reading it for kids and adults like it so much, but, in truth, we all still have a little bit of a kid in us. And it kind of serves the purpose of reminding us about that sometimes.
Well, I think one of the nice things about it is as you approach each festival, it allows you to immerse yourself in the story which tells you the meaning of the festival. Then it gives you a hands-on activity, a craft. Then it gives you a recipe so you can make a traditional dish that goes with the festival. And each festival is from a different country.
Yeah.
So, and I have a lot of foreign words with pronunciation guides in there. So you can immerse yourself and you can actually, stop, pay attention to nature, pay attention to what the planet is doing, what the world is doing, and not be so preoccupied with the news maybe or your phone, or the internet or, all the things that we get trapped into. And this just allows you to get into your senses because you get to hear the story out loud, you get to work with your hands, you get to make a recipe so you can taste the flavors and the smells of the holiday. So it's very immersive, and it just reminds you to get back with nature. That's what people desperately need, especially children. The other day I was in the supermarket. I swear I can't get this image out of my mind. This mother goes trotting by, staring at her phone, and there were 3 kids in her wake. One was taller, the next one was a little shorter, and then there's a little tiny kid, looked like about 5. And the kids all had phones, and they were scrolling through their phones as they walked by.
Oh, my God.
I know, and I'm thinking, how can they even see where they're going? Because they weren't looking up. They were just staring at their phones, the whole family. And I just watched that, and I thought, wow. To me, I live in the woods. I'm very connected to nature. The minute I walk outside the door, I'm in the woods, right?
Yeah.
So every window that I look outside, I see trees, I see herbs, I see deer. There's always something out there, and I just can't imagine being that trapped by a phone, But I see it. I'm a full-time author now, but when I had a part-time job, it used to mystify me because on my break, I would be outside no matter what the weather was. If it was snowing, if it was raining, I was always outside, and I saw the most amazing things. I saw coyotes. I saw muskrats. I saw bobcats. I heard the owls talking before storms came. There were so many things. And the other people, my coworkers, would go right to the break room and stare at the phone. And again, I watched that, and I thought it was so sad. I felt like they were cut off, from the world. And I don't know. I just hope if anybody's listening, please figure out a way to, put the phone down for a little
disengage,
bit. Yeah, disengage, and then engage with the world, with what's out there.
I know this is going to sound odd and foreign to some people who are listening to the podcast, but once upon a time, back in the past, before technology pulled us away from communing with nature or people, really people used to gather and actually talk to each other face to face. And that's how traditions and history and folktales were transmitted. And so, in this book, you really have brought back the past. And I thought that was, right off the bat, that was wonderful.
Yeah, well, that is one of the major points of the book, and it's kind of what I do with all my books. And again, I didn't consciously realize I was doing it until 20 years in. But with all my books, what I seem to be doing is finding the old traditions, the old materials, and bringing them forward so that people in the modern age can appreciate them. Once again, keeping them alive. Somebody has to do that. you know.
Yes.
Otherwise they die, they go away.
And that's like what Dave the Bard does, you know, with his CDs, the Maganovi. I can never say that right. But, you know, the old Welsh tales that kids grew up on for years and years, and he put music to each tale. And you know, again, he always says when you listen to these CDs, just sit down and close your eyes and listen. And that's
and then
lost
with
art.
this book, with the book Once Around the Sun, it's designed to be read out loud.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same thing. You'll have one person reading, and everybody else can sit back. They can close their eyes. They can lie down on the floor. You know, they can sit in front of the fire and listen. Just listen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, put down the phone, put down everything, and because the stories in there are really well written, and you know, I mean, everything about the book is so nice. But so, what was the catalyst for you writing this book in the first place?
Well, like I said, it was the middle of the pandemic, and I think it was self-soothing. You know, I just thought. I mean, I have another children's book, Walking the World in Wonder, a children's herbal, which you mentioned. This is my second children's book. I usually do grown-up books. This is only my second kid. Well, actually, I have another one, Secret Medicines from Your Kitchen, which is a book that I like to recommend to kids because it's making home remedies, you know, in the kitchen kind of thing. But I think I just was putting myself into a childlike frame of mind. I thought, you know, we're in the middle of this terrible pandemic and people are dying, and I can't do a heavy-duty nonfiction work. You know, I just couldn't. I just had to do something that would bring me peace and enjoyment, you know. And, of course, if it brought it to me, then hopefully it would bring it to the reader. And I think that's what happened.
Yeah, and it's very lighthearted. You know, you can really jump into it and just not want to put it down. And, I mean, maybe you don't have to put it down. You go read it through once, and then for each Sabbath go back and do the rituals and read the stories and stuff. But it was really a comforting book to read, as opposed to some of the others, you know, protection magic, you know, the dark side of something, all of that kind of stuff. It's just, well, I don't mean this to be a pun, but it's just very down to earth. And, yeah.
Yes. Well, yeah, that was the idea. I mean, put yourself back to where we were in January of 2020, and, you know, things felt pretty grim. So that's where it got born. It got born in the dark, like the year, which begins at Samhain, in the dark, and then it slowly spun around, and there's poetry in there, you know, and the illustrations are gorgeous. Lauren Mills lives in Massachusetts. She's a local artist. But both she and her daughter do incredible work. You can look her up online, Lauren A. Mills. But she did, these are oil paintings. Each illustration is actually an oil painting. And
they're gorgeous.
Yeah, they are. They're incredibly beautiful. They're very layered, very painterly. You know, it's not the modern cartoon, garish kind of kids' books that you see.
What? No anime?
No. I mean, this is it's genuine artwork. In fact, each of these illustrations is right now hanging in a gallery in Northampton, Massachusetts. That's how beautiful they are.
And the colors. I mean, she's really good with colors. They just kind of stand out, and they're not, you know, blaring. They're not psychedelic, hallucinogenic colors, but they're warm colors, but they make it so nice to look at. So, yeah, I was going to mention that a little while down the line, but I'm glad you brought it up because the whole book is just really charming. I guess that's a good word for it, but it is.
Yeah, I would say that. I would say the illustrations are charming. That's a good word. Yeah, they don't assault you, you know.
No, I mean, the whole thing, it's just... it's like this is what our ancestors did. This is how we talked. This is how they, lived, and the Wheel of the Year and everything. I mean, it just, it's not just something new. It's something that's new again, and something that either people don't know about, or those of us who are older maybe tend to forget at times, what the basis of these things are, and how the world really was kind of kinder and gentler back then in certain ways. So, yeah, the whole thing, it works really well. How did you choose the tales for the book? I mean, each one, like you said, coincides with the Wheel of the Year. I mean, there must have been lots of choices to choose from.
Well, I've been a pagan for a long time, since 1983, actually. That was when I first heard about Druids, when I was on the island of Iona in Scotland. And that's, I kind of realized that's kind of what I was. And then after that, I got my initiations and all that. But I've been doing this for a long time. So for each festival, I basically just remembered the traditions that I knew, and the interesting thing is they're from all different cultures. As a Druid, my group, Tribe of the Oak, focuses on Irish tradition, but only 2 of the stories are Irish. But we have Scottish in here. There's Italian, Polish. That actually came as, I just remembered seeing a painting of a ritual in Poland, people standing around a fire. These are just things that I picked up along my journey. And if I did a follow-up book, I would really have to think about it, because these are the ones that were sort of on the top of my mind, But, I mean, it wouldn't be that hard. I could find them, but I would have to do research. So.
Yeah, no, and you just mentioned Druid, and something just reminded me. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they wanted to know, and I don't have a really good explanation for this. I mean, I kind of know, but I don't say it well. What's the difference between a witch and a Druid? That's what they want to know.
Well, the old expression, if you ask 3 pagans, you'll get 10 different answers. So the way I explain it, because this is the way I was taught, okay, I'm just going to say, I'm not saying that this is the only truth, but this is what I was taught, and you can take it or leave it. But we know that the Druids were part of the nobility. They were part of the Nemid class, which is the sacred class. They were on par with royalty or higher than royalty, because they were the ones who sanctified royalty, and supervised the elevation of a warrior to make them a king. It had to be done by a Druid, so in some ways the Druid is even more sacred, But anyway, so the Druid was a tribal functionary. They worked with the nobility, with the king, with the queen. They were intellectuals. They were very well educated. It took at least 20 years to become a Druid. And this is why it drives me nuts when people say, I have an Irish grandmother, therefore I'm a Druid. Or I love trees, therefore I'm a Druid. It took 20 years of study, and nothing was written down, so they memorized all the laws. And but they were called the people of arts, the Eostre. So they were experts. So to be a Druid is to be an expert. Okay, it's not just some casual thing. So if the tribe had a Druid, the tribe or the kingdom always knew that the Druid was going to work for the king or for the queen. There was no doubt about that. That's just how it worked. And the witch is a whole different animal. The witch is a law unto herself. Okay? So they were usually solitary. they might be well educated, but often they were just people in the working with the common people. They lived in the village or a little bit away from the village, but they were people of arts, but they were working with the commoners usually. And there are exceptions. Like if you think of Queen Elizabeth, for example, she always had a alchemist or a magician in her court. But generally the witches were commoners, and they were working with the commoners. But they were veterinarians. They were healers. They were therapists.
Midwives.
Midwives. Yeah, exactly. They were performing herbalists.
Yeah.
All those functions, but they were independent, free agents, and they were a law unto themselves. And that's why people were scared of them, because you didn't know whose side they were on. So with the Druid, you always knew that they were going to be doing battle magic for the king. If they were doing battle magic, it would be for the king or for the queen, for the tribe. With the witch, you didn't know, and that's scary.
Shifty.
It's just scary because you don't know what they're going to do.
I know. Well, we still don't know what we're going to do. It's one of those things, how it goes.
Well, does that make sense to you? I mean, that's...
Yeah, no, it does. And, and I had read up on it and talked to people about it. And some people say, well, the Druids were the teachers. They taught the children of royalty as well.
That's correct. The children of the nobility, yeah.
And then also, if they were invited to a noble person's house for dinner, they would sit at the head of the table as opposed to the people whose house it was, because that was the seat of honor.
Yes, you would have to put them in the seat of honor. And then if they showed up at some fort and they came to tell stories or, entertain people, some of these stories went on for days. They memorized. We actually have a book called the Urakechna Rir, The Laws of the Poets, and it tells you exactly how many stories they had to memorize for every year of their training. Wow. And the most highly trained ones had 500 stories under their belt. So they could go all night, they could go all day, they could go for days, and you had to pay them. So they were kind of like rock stars, the ones that were fully trained, and you had to give them cows. So a really well-trained storyteller / druid person, bard, might be worth 12 cows, if they showed up. Yeah,
it's really kind of amazing. All right, so that I think we answered the question, hopefully, anyway. We were talking, you mentioned earlier about the fairies when my mic went off weird, and someone in the chat room wants to know if there's a particular kind of fairy that goes with spring, or, how many fairies, any kind of special fairies.
There are lots and lots of fairies. There's just tons of them. There's the Lunantashi, which are moon fairies. There are fairies that love the flowers. In fact, there's a tradition at Beltane. You sprinkle primroses in front of your door, and the reason you do that is they love the primroses so much that they won't come in the house.
Oh, wow.
That kind of keeps them outside. Yeah, there are all these prohibitions, like the blooming hawthorn. The hawthorn blooms on May Day, at least in Ireland it does. And you're never supposed to bring it into the house, because if you do, the fairies will come with it, and then they'll be in your house, and then they cause all kinds of mischief,
Yeah, especially the little brownies and stuff. They get a little crazy. I used to say, well, I wish, some fairies would come in and help me with the housework. And, then I kept reading more things. And no, I don't think so. They're not going to help me clean. I'm going to have to clean up after them, and they're, like the Harry Potter.
Some of them, they're called the brunies. The brunies, some of them help you. But if you offend them, that's what I was trying to get at. Because I've had this happen. Somebody was doing an interview one And every time I started to talk about the fairies, and I hope this doesn't happen now, but the tape recorder would stop. This is back in the day when we had tape recorders. It would stop, and it wouldn't start until I changed the subject.
Oh, that's
and that
funny.
happened. That happened like 3 or 4 times because I was talking about the fairies. And then finally he said to me, Ellen, this was Victor Anderson, by the way, who some of you may have heard of. He said, this is an old Jewish prayer. Just recite after me. And he gave me this prayer in Hebrew, and we recited the prayer, and then it stopped happening.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, they can be, I know the Harry Potter movies are fiction and whatever, but if anybody watched the second one where they brought in these little pixies in cages and they burst into the room and caused havoc and, you know, I mean, it can be. I'm just saying, it can be.
Yeah, well, those are
Cornish pixies.
Those are Cornish. Yeah, they're definitely pesky, those guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the people have a misconception. There's many different kinds of fairies, but in Celtic tradition, like in Irish tradition and so on, the fairies are not always these little tiny mischievous creatures. They can be anything from a water horse, which is a very scary. It's like a horse that shows up and it's so beautiful, and you get on its back, and the next thing you know, it's trying to drown you. Or if it's by the ocean, it might show up and it has no skin, so all you see is blood. You see the veins, like the raw flesh.
Oh no.
Yeah, they can be really scary, or they can be very noble looking. They can look like kings and queens riding by on a beautiful horse. There's just many different kinds.
Yeah, and there's big ones that are evil, too. People all think they're Tinkerbells, but they're not all Tinkerbells. There are some that are not happy campers, I guess. Just, kind of stay away from that.
They can be scary. They can also be hairy.
Yeah,
They can be.
True.
The Sasquatch is a fairy, by the way. I mean, people are looking for these Sasquatches, the Yetis, and they can't ever find one. Well, they're not going to find one because they exist in a different dimension. That's a fairy. In Scotland, it would be called a gruagach. It's like this tall, 6-foot-tall, hairy fairy, and in Scotland, it would travel with the cows or the deer. But it likes to hang out with the cows and take care of the cows, and you're supposed to offer it milk. You're supposed to have a special stone called the Gruagach stone, where you pour the milk and make an offering. The first milking should always go to the fairy, and then after that you can take the milk. But anyway, that's why they're never going to find one. People will see them, and they'll go, "Oh, I saw one," or they might even. I don't know if they'll ever get a photograph. I don't know if those are fake or real, but they will never find one because it's a fairy. It's a different dimension.
Well, people that have been on the show and talked about Bigfoot and Sasquatch and all that, I mean, some people thought they are aliens, and others thought they were time travelers, and others thought they were interdimensional beings. So, it all falls into place because they're not normal here. I mean, not like bears and lions and tigers.
I think I like the term interdimensional because they live sort of on the astral plane. They don't live on the same plane that we do, but occasionally we can see them, and I'm sure they're just as surprised as we are.
Yeah, we're scared of them. They're probably running faster than we are because we are very scary. All right, I'm going to be scary. This half an hour went by already, really quickly.
Ooh, that was
I know. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to do a little more journering. Oh my God, around the sun, and we'll talk more about the book. So everybody, stay right where you are, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
Don't go away. There's more Stirring the Cauldron with Marla Brooks right after these important messages.
It's that time of year again, me pagan and witchy folks. The time for Witches Fest USA, a pagan fair where we all gather dressed as all the magical folks we love, like fays, elves, sprites, and more. With magical vendors, enchanting performers, and magical presenters of all kinds, paths, and traditions. After the opening ceremony on July the 14th, the fair runs from July 15th to the 17th, and on Saturday, July 16th, you can come in person and spend the day on Astor Place in New York City and enjoy free workshops, vendors, presenters, a DJ, and live performances. Friday and Sunday will be live streaming online on the world stage for all to participate. There are over 95 occult workshops to choose from in real time or view them on demand at your convenience. For information and registration, go to www.witchesfestusa.org. That's www.witchesfestusa.org. Get caught up in the magic and enjoy.
Are you haunted by shadow people in the middle of the night?
Do you secretly love all things creepy and spooky, enjoying ghost stories and horror fiction from the best storytellers?
Do you have a true ghost experience you want to share, but no one will believe you?
If yes, listen to the professionals on What Are You Afraid Of? Horror Paranormal Show, Friday nights at 9 p.m. on Para X Radio and at www.whatareyouafraidofpodcast.com.
What Are You Afraid Of on Para X?
Our creepy and demented hosts are on call to provide you with all your spooky needs with true ghost stories, interviews, indie music, and new horror fiction. We are ready to scare you.
Para X. Welcome back to Stirring the Cauldron. Once again, here's your host, Marla Brooks.
And my guest tonight is Evert Hopman, and we're talking about A Journey Around the Sun, which happens to be the name of her new book. We were talking just about the Beltane fairies, or she asked about the Beltane spring fairies. But talking about Samhain and Beltane, I just have to throw in a quick plug about your two other books, because you have The Sacred Herbs of Samhain, which is a guide to the magical herbs of Samhain for divination and protection and as tools for contacting spirits. And you also have The Sacred Herbs of Spring, which is magical, healing and edible plants and celebrating Beltane. So, it's like all these books that you have, we all have to have because they all kind of tie in one to another. And, it's really nice. So, let me see. Let's talk about the Wheel of the Year, because I learned something right from the beginning of the book, and those bits of info run throughout the book. But me, like many other people, probably never gave much thought as to how the Sabbats were created. And we learned that the wheel is a yearly cycle of seasonal festivals around the solstices and equinoxes and the midpoints between them. But I was really surprised to read that the ancient Celts had only two seasons. Winter began at Samhain and summer began at Beltane. Right. When were the rest of them added, or how, I know you have to start somewhere.
Well, the pagan calendar that we're used to, the 8 festivals, is kind of it's a mishmash, It's a combination of sort of Norse tradition or Scandinavian tradition. The solstices and equinoxes were very much a part of Scandinavian tradition. They were also important in the Bronze Age, and we know that because Bronze Age and Neolithic monuments, are oriented to the solstices. Like, for example, Stonehenge, right? Summer solstice and winter solstice. It's the sunrise on the summer solstice, and it's the sunset on the winter solstice. That's Stonehenge. That's the most obvious example. But for the Celts, the solstices and equinoxes were very minor. We have little traditions that go on at those times, but it's not a big deal. The really big deal was what you're calling the cross quarters, I guess, which for us are the fire festivals. Those are the really important ones. So that would be Samhain, and then Imbolc, and Beltane or Bealtaine, and Lunasa, or what you would call Lammas. Those are the most important festivals. Those are the high holy days for the Celts. And if you think about it, the solstices and equinoxes are a different religion because they're very sky-oriented, and the fire festivals are very earth-oriented. It's actually a different religion. But modern pagans, we've kind of thrown it all together. Gerald Gardner and Ross Nichols invented that eightfold wheel of the year. So that's not an old thing. So one of the things that I was careful to do in the book is for each festival I try to say exactly which culture it's from and use the words from that language so you can learn the words. And then I have a recipe from that culture. So you can taste the food, but they're very distinct, and
Well, okay, you mentioned the recipes, and all of the recipes in the book look really good. But I have a question about a particular ingredient, because you have recipes for bilberry scones and bilberry pie, and I have no clue what a bilberry is.
It's a blueberry, basically. That's just the English, that's the British term for blueberry.
Oh, shoot, okay.
Yeah,
Good.
I mean, I think it has a different Latin name, but it's basically a blueberry. So if you find any recipe for bilberries, you can use blueberries, what we call blueberries. Yeah.
Scones and pie, we all love blueberry scones and pie. So, yeah, I was just thinking, oh, my God. Yeah, I mean, I wrote a cookbook once. I didn't know what a bilberry was, and I was like, oh, my God. All right, so thank you for that. I can breathe now. Not worry that I didn't know something in that way. Let me think. I have to say that the crafts are really good also. But you take one step further than most, I think. Because, for example, one of the exercises is how to make a magic wand. And okay, so you can talk about whittling a stick and gathering it and don't take it from a live tree and all that stuff. But you not only explain the basics, but you also include a list of woods and their properties. So it's not like we're just going to, make a wand. If we're going to make a wand, we want it something that goes along with us. And
exactly.
so that, was really good. Or when making a wreath, you offer magical properties of the herbs, the flowers, the vines, and the woods. No stones unturned. So, all of these things are so well written that you don't have to ask a question except me with the bilberry, But, as far as the craft.
Well, that's the difference between doing magic and just, doing decoration. Because you can make a wreath and throw it on your door and decorate your door, and say, oh, it's spring, I'm going to put a wreath on the door. But it's magic if you know the properties of the plants that you are putting on your door. And the energy that you're creating by putting that on your door, or hanging it in the house, or putting it over the door lintel, or is that what it's called, over the top of the door?
Yeah.
That's the difference between magic and just decorating. That's the way I think of it.
Yeah, well, some people do things superficially because it's easy and they don't know the history. You'll talk to some newbies in the craft or whatever, and you ask them one simple question, they have no clue. It's more like, oh, well, maybe I should dress like a goth, and, maybe I should make, rhyming spells for love. Hopefully those people start to learn and start to question the old ways and the ancients and things that were done, in different ways, rather than just kind of being superficial.
Well, the book, even though it's for children, quote unquote, there is depth to it because, for example, I have the Futhark, the younger Futhark alphabet, which is the runic alphabet. And then I also have, and that's on the Viking, there's a chapter with Vikings, and and Viking food recipes, you know. And then I have the Ogham alphabet. So for the Irish story about druids, you learn the Ogham alphabet. So there's, I mean, if a kid really studies this book, they're going to pick up quite a lot of stuff.
Well, not only that, but I think it's going to pique the interest to learn more. And I think that's important. You know, never shut your mind and think you know everything, because you don't. I mean, you know, I always point out, like I did now I had no clue that there were only two parts of the year, you know, Beltane and Samhain. If we stop learning, we might as well just jump in a hole, because there's just so much out there, and I love learning. And you know, you don't have to make it sound like we had to read some book for school and junior high. No, you know, we do this because we want to, and books like yours just bring out the interest in people. They want to know more after they read.
In case anybody's listening, they didn't just have Samhain and Beltane. They also had Imbolc, you know, in February, and Lunasa in late July, early August. Actually, starting about now. But as soon as the grain is ready, and around where I am, it's certainly ready now. But the most important festivals are Samhain and Beltane, and that's because this has to do with the cows. And if you've ever looked at wild animals, for example, the buffalo in Yosemite or anything like that, you'll see that at Samhain, when the first frosts start to come in, or the snow or the cold, the animals come down from the hills. They come down into the valleys for winter. And then at Beltane, the opposite happens. The herds move up into the mountains. So the Celts were a cow culture. They're very, you know, involved with their herds. And at Samhain, they would drive the herds down from the hills and move them into the farm, into the enclosure for winter. And then at Bealtaine, and there's a big ritual purification and all this, they would drive the cows back up into the hills. And that's the meaning. It's like, now it's summer. And the way you know that it's warm enough to send the cows back up to the hills is because the hawthorn is blooming. You know, they didn't have smartphones. They didn't have TV. You know, they would just wait for the hawthorn to bloom, because the hawthorn knows when the hawthorn blooms, that means it's summer. The tree knows, and you can safely send your cows back up to the hills. So that's what that was all about.
Yeah, I mean, it's so fascinating that you just want to read more and learn more, and like I said, it's really important. Also, aside from recipes and from stories and things, there are also several interesting games and competitions for the Lunasa celebration, like lifting sticks and rebo and wife carrying. I kind of thought that was cute. You know, so in other words, it's another way just to get back to basics too and enjoy something. You don't have to be a kid to play lifting sticks or some. There's a whole bunch of them there, and it just kind of made me.
Yeah, there's a reason why those are in there, though, and I mean it has to do with the meaning of the festival.
Right.
Lunasa was a time for competitions and horse racing. You know, poetry competitions, music competitions, you know, who has the best crafts, you know, the most beautiful jewelry, and these big fairs. You know, we still kind of do that with our county fairs, which usually happen in the fall. But for the Celts, they would have these Lunasa assemblies, these big assemblies, and it's all about competition. So I said, okay, if you're a kid and you're competing, let's look up some traditional games. You know, so horseshoes, and that horseshoe pitching is the Romans did that, but also the Celts, and horses are very much a big part of the Lunasa celebration, which is what's coming up, you know, for us in the next week or two. But so ritually, horses were animals of fire, and you would drive them through water. So if you had a river or a pond, you would drive your horses through it. And you would bring fire and water together. Those are the two basic building blocks of the world, of the universe. And when fire and water come together, you make magic, because that's the basis of all creation. And at Beltane, you have the cows, which are lunar animals filled with liquid called milk, or in Vedic tradition, soma. But you drive your lunar watery animals between two fires on their way up to the hills. And again, you're bringing water and fire together. And that's part of the Vedic Indo-European tradition.
And there's just so much in this book that, it's one of those things that I tell people you need it in your library, because it's just, like we said, it's comforting, it's learning, it's all kinds of goodness there. And again, people, you were talking about, each chapter actually begins with an explanation of keywords and terms and the pronunciations, and that's really helpful. I mean, like you said, because it's meant to be read out loud, and if you just look at the word without knowing how to pronounce it, it can make your eyes crossed in some of the cases. So, I think that's what I'm saying. You took the extra step in everything you did in the book to make it completely crystal clear to everybody and understandable. And
except the bilberries. The bilberries.
Except the bilberries, yeah. And I know you just, had to do that.
Well, I did give the Latin name, so if somebody was really curious, they could look up the Latin name.
I wasn't that curious. I was just like smacking myself in the head. Why don't I know this? One of those things. So, yeah.
Wait a minute. I'm reading from the book here. Bilberries are very similar to blueberries, in case you were wondering. You can substitute blueberries for bilberries in any recipe. I have that in the book.
Oh, God, my eyes were crossed then. I just looked at the recipe and thought it was really good, and I didn't read the fine print. Well, that's where I need to go back and start reading the whole book again, for sure. Just you go, it's like watching a movie sometimes. You watch a movie and you think it's really, really good, and then you happen to watch it again for whatever reason, and you pick up things that you missed the first time around. I mean, yeah. So that is going to be with this book too. I know I missed a lot, but thanks. Now I know. But yeah, I mean, it's just kind of an amazing book, and the stories again. Do you have a favorite tale? I mean, I'm not going to ask you to read it, but do you have a favorite tale in the chapters?
I'm flipping through it. It's hard to say. They're all my babies.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like them all.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, no. Well, we're talking about. We start with the goddess of winter, and then the old Nicaean, the return of the sun, and La Befana, of course, for Christmas, the Christmas witch, and then waiting for Bridget. I mean, yeah, it follows all the way down, but they're really nice stories, and they're not like 2 paragraphs long. I mean, they are tales to be read. It's like when you start to reading those, people need to hunker down and just, again, close your eyes and listen to the story, because it's not going to be over in 2 minutes. It's going to be a really good story.
Yeah, okay, so the first story is called A Tale of the Cailleach, the great goddess of winter, which is for Samhain. And then the second one is Old Nissa and the Return of Sunna, the sun goddess, which is a Norse tale for the winter solstice. And then La Befana, the Christmas witch, which is an Italian tale for the new year. Waiting for Bridget, which is an Irish tale for Imbolc. Eostre, the goddess of spring, hares, and eggs, which is an Anglo-Saxon Germanic tale for spring equinox, featuring rabbits, of course. A Magical Beltane Journey, which is an Irish tale for May Day, featuring druids, young druids. Kupalnocka and the Magical Fern Flower, which is a Polish tale for the summer solstice. Lugh of the Long Arm and the Blessing of the Early Harvest, which is an Irish tale for Lunasa. And then The Spirit of the Grain and the Spirits of the Sea, which is a Scottish tale It's from Orkney for the fall equinox, and that takes you once around the sun. The wheel of the year.
Yeah. I was so happy when I opened the book and started looking through it. It's just one of those things that it's not going to make me go, oh no, do I have to read this book? This is, well, sometimes, things get over my head. I'm thinking, oh my God, I've got to study too hard on this one. But no, I mean, it's really important. I think that everybody should kind of learn the backstories of especially, Druids, witches, whatever. It's just part of a heritage that has been long lost, and it's maybe time to bring it back.
Yeah, all my books kind of do that.
Well, they do,
and people can visit my website, by the way, which is just EllenEvertHopman.com, EllenEvertHop as in Paul, MAN.com, and you can see all my books listed there. And you can also find the books in independent bookstores. You can find them on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. They're just wherever you get your books. You can order them from me, although I usually tell people that if they're in England or Australia, places like that, it's probably not a good idea to order directly from me, because I've had the experience of mailing books to Australia. It took over a month for the books to get there. The mail has just gotten really crazy. But other than that, if you're in the United States and you want a signed copy, you can always go to my website and order from there.
And also on your website, you've got your blog, you've got Willow's Grove Shop, your books, as you said, Tribe of the Oak, and a whole lot of stuff up there. I mean, you can spend an hour or two looking around the website and getting some good information. So and also your events. And I was going to bring this up, that speaking of events, before we go, you are a presenter at Witchfest USA this weekend. And for those who don't know what it is, it's a 3-day event from the 14th to the 17th. And it's both in person and broadcasted online. And last year, Nicholas Pearson and I did a workshop together online. And on one of those days, people were attending the event at Astor Place, New York City on Saturday. And as we were talking before, people can still go on the day of the weekend, this weekend, right?
Yeah, I mean, actually the opening ceremony is tonight. And it's probably happening right now. But all day tomorrow, starting around 10 a.m. and going into the evening, there are classes online, and you can still sign up, no problem, And then on Saturday, it's live in New York City, if anybody happens to be in New York City, and they encourage people to dress up. So they like you to come dressed, in costume. And then Sunday again, all-day Sunday is classes. So on Friday, which is tomorrow, I'm doing a workshop on Druid magic at 2:30 in the afternoon Eastern time. And then on Sunday, speaking of fairies, on Sunday I'm doing the sacred herbs of spring and magical uses of spring herbs and plants, and I will be talking about different herbs that the fairies like.
That's always interesting, because people are always asking about offerings and who gets what kind of offering, so people should tune in. And here's the thing, people, when you sign up and you think that, she's going to be live on Friday and on Sunday, but there's something like, 99 workshops or something, at least there were last year.
Yeah.
And once you buy your ticket, those workshops stay up indefinitely. So you're getting to get 99 workshops for one price. And, most workshops are more than $99 to begin with. So it's, if you can't hear the live things, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, they do have question and answers. There's like chat rooms in there, as I recall. So if you do it live, people can, ask you questions then. But, I mean, it's really kind of a great deal. And I've seen some pictures of past events, and people dress up wonderfully, beautifully. I mean, there are fairies, there are nymphs, there's all kinds of people there. Really good costumes. So, yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun, I think.
Yeah, and you have the rest of the year to slowly work your way through all the talks.
There you go. So if anybody's interested, you can go to Witches Fest USA, and it's WITCHSFESTUSA.org. And you can see who all the presenters are, when they're going to be on. There's also vendors, and I mean it's a really nice event. What's this? Is the 11th or the 12th year? Something like that.
I'm not sure. I don't know how many. I thought this was newer than that, but I could be wrong. This is only the second year that I've spoken there, so
yeah,
new to me.
It was new to me last year too. So
yeah, I have a feeling it's only been a few years. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I'm just looking at something else, but yeah. So that's that. So give out your website information one more time so people can find out what's going on with you and the books, because, I mean, there's so many wonderful books that she's got, guys. You got to really look at them.
Okay, so the book, again, that we've been talking about is called Once Around the Sun, Stories, Crafts, and Recipes to Celebrate the Sacred Earth Year. My website is just my name, Ellen, E-L-L-E-N, Evert, E-V, as in Victor, E-R-T-H-O-P, as in Paul, M-A-N.com. And if you go to my website, elleneverthopman.com, I have a blog, I have a calendar of events, I have a lot of archaeology on there. What else do I have? I have a Druid book list for people who are serious about Druidism. There's a very good basic book list. There's a link where you can go to Tribe of the Oak, or you can just go to tribeoftheoak.com, which is the Druid group that I am currently Archdruid of. But it's, I mean, we welcome people to come and join us, but you really need to be ready to do work. This is not something where you just plunk down $25 and become a Druid. It's not like that. There's actual study. So if you're ready to study and you really want to learn the history and so on, it starts with a lot of reading, and then when you're done with the reading, then there are hands-on projects, and you work one-on-one with a mentor, and it takes years. It takes at least 3 years. The quickest anyone's ever done it is 3 years.
That's great. All right. Well, we have to run, so thank you for coming back and sharing Once Around the Sun, and you said you have a couple new books in the works, so you'll be back, I hope. Yeah.
Well, if you invite me, I'll come.
I will always invite you. No worries there.
Okay.
All right. And thanks to all the listeners as well. And until next time, everybody, blessed be, and merry meet again.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Stirring the Cauldron with Marla Brooks. Please join us again next week at the same time for another great guest and more cauldron stirring. Any rebroadcast or other use of this program without explicit permission is strictly prohibited. Copyright 2024. The Mysterioso March by Kevin MacLeod is licensed through Incompetech.com.